living in an artificially induced state of consciousness that resembles sleep. The poor and the underclass are growing. Racial justice and human rights are non-existent. We have been lulled into a trance. They have made us indifferent to ourselves, to others. We are focused only on our own gain. That is their primary method of survival. Keep us asleep, keep us selfish, keep us sedated.
You're listening to Toward Anarchy on the Republic Broadcasting Network. Here's your host, Michael Storm.
The last time you get to hear that music, if I'm actually able to get myself together this week and do what I plan to do, that all that pop music may go away finally once and for all. Welcome to the show. It is Toward Anarchy. I am your host, Michael Storm. We do this live here every Sunday on the Republic Broadcasting Network, 1 to 3 p.m. Central Time, and we just come here and talk and chat and have a little fun and just kind of talk about some of the things that are going on in the world a little bit, but in relation to me and the people that I'm interested in. That's the caveat. When I'm the one here at the controls, well, kind of at the controls. I mean, the only reason it all happens at all is because Ken's there, and none of it would happen if it wasn't for producer Ken making it. So thankfully to him, he's got that end of it. I'll run the voice, and we'll try to make this thing happen. And as always, you can go to towardanarchy.com to follow along. It's another beautiful Sunday here in the middle of America. I'm in Topeka, Kansas. We're on lockdown. It happened Thursday. The county came out, the mayor came out and said that our county, Shawnee County, that's where I'm at, with a whopping total of 0 cases at the time. I guess there's 3 now. That that happened the very next day, the very next morning. All of a sudden, there's 3 cases here now. 0 cases in the county. Went on a voluntary sort of stay at home. It's safer at home. And all these Orwellian terms they've been using for this soft martial law that they put in place. And then yesterday, was it yesterday? I guess it's yesterday. The governor came out and said that they were going to lock the state down, do the same thing, stay-at-home order for the entire state. But then I saw a news story this morning that the Republicans are going to challenge her and try to overturn the stay order. So I don't know. We'll see what happens here in the state of Kansas. I know that a lot of other places are on lockdown. A lot of other places are not. I know that Kansas is one of the only places that school has been ended entirely for the year, and they've already switched. My wife is a public school teacher, so they've already switched to the online learning systems. It was all fairly well in place for anybody junior high and on up anyway, middle school, whatever you call it, wherever you're at, on up. Through college, everything through the rest of the education system, they were already in place, and the elementary was really, really close. They all have their own assigned technology. They all have their own access to the internet and to the networks and learning tools, and a lot of those learning tools are online now. And so it's not been very hard to do. It's one of the positive things that I think will come out of this. I hope. Anyway, is that they will finally move away. The public school system is bad enough. There's so many things wrong with the public school system. We'd go on and on about it forever and ever. And especially if you break it down by individual community and start pointing out this, and this. But just across the board, there are all these things that are wrong with the public school system. And one of them is the fact that they all have to get up in the morning and be bused to a place and stuck in the classroom together and all that. And it's so antiquated. The idea is antiquated. It's so old-fashioned that it's ridiculous to even think about it. And it's funny because I've made this joke for years and years. I've been coming back and forth to Kansas from Colorado since I was an early teen. My grandmother moved to Kansas, and some other relatives were already out here apparently. And and so we came back to visit her fairly regularly. And then eventually my mom moved out here after she got divorced. And then I moved out here to go to college. It's up and on, back and forth, all of these years across, coming back and forth between Kansas and Colorado. Hang on, I got to get myself a drink here. It's still interesting. I still have this the lingering little cough or something, a little bit of, there's nothing else. It's just a little bit of sort of phlegm builds up and makes me cough. But I have my coffee to wash it all down with. What was he even talking about? Coming back to Colorado, back and forth across the road. I don't know. At any rate, what was it? Oh, and the public school systems and what's wrong with that's right. Okay, thank you. I don't know. I got off on this thing going back and forth and everything, but no, with the public school systems, there's so many things wrong with them. The idea that they're still in a classroom is just ridiculous, and so they're not in the classroom anymore. And I think this is one of the great things that's going to come out of it is that I think a lot of the public learning institutions will rely more on this distance education, and there's all these other problems and things inside the classroom with the individuals that help out in the classroom. This solves so many of the problems and takes a bigger step towards parents and individuals being able to take control of their education so much more, because for one thing, they're not being bussed off to that location. I wish I remember what the point was that I started to wander off on. I imagine I was going somewhere. It doesn't matter though, because all of this, I've been telling you about this for a couple of weeks now, and the fact that I still have this little bit of cold is kind of the tribute to the whole thing. And so it's kind of interesting. The speculation is have a lot of people already had this? Has this already peaked in the nation? And according to the CDC's own numbers, it already has. It peaked in the 16th, so more than a week ago now. It had already peaked. Almost 2 weeks ago now, it had already peaked, according to CDC numbers. But again, I warned you that these numbers, you can't trust any of these numbers, because this is a real-time thing. It's happening in real time, and we don't even need to include any question of conspiracy or the whys or any of that. I mean, just the reality of what is happening. And it's weird. What's this? You know what that sound is? That's the sound of a ratchet. And that's what seems to keep happening here. And I mentioned this a couple weeks ago, and how this is a cascading, ratcheting event. It keeps, every time I think it's slowed down, they drop another bomb on you. And that makes me worried, because if it's a plan, then there's a piece of paper somewhere, and they've kind of already showed that they have, where there was this document going around that was a timeline of when each state had to shut down to supposedly avoid what happened in Italy or any of the other places where it's hit harder. And so if they can map out a timeline like that, even if that wasn't sort of planned out in advance, if they can map it out in real time, then they can map out any other thing in real time, and it means something or it mean nothing, depending on what the numbers are. And so it all comes down to who you can trust. And, well, let's face it, the people that you can trust are the people that you keep near you and the people that you love. And so what's important, again, is that we're doing what we need to do locally, personally, within our lives this is what matters. This is the important things, and we're taking care of ourselves. And this is the other good thing that I think comes out of this. And this is what sort of is interesting, that sort of spits in the face of conspiracy, because all the New World Order conspiracy across the board, all of the events are meant to separate us, to destroy the family, to get us apart from each other, to keep us fighting with each other. And this is doing exactly the opposite of that. So it's an interesting little thing that's happening here. This can go so many ways. America could change. The world could change in a lot of great ways through this. And so we're we just sit here and we hope, and we do the things that we can within this. There's so many facets of this thing. It's going off in so many directions because there's all of us, and we all each have our own individual decisions and our input and the things that we're going to do that will make changes in and around us, and will make a difference in whether or not what's happening is long-term, short-term, ultimately more devastating than they say, less devastating. None of those things will matter because you will have done what's important and what's right around you. It seems like the store's recovering a little bit. I've just kind of, I thought about, taking just a whole bunch of ideas and writing them down in a row and just see if I could tag it, because it's called Corona, and it's a crown, and it's the sun's points, and it's that's what it references to, is the corona, the crown around the sun, and all of the different points that come off of it. And that's the way I keep looking at it, the way I keep seeing this. There's so many things that are happening. We're looking at mandatory vaccinations. We're looking at the potential for a permanent lockdown in some ways. In some ways, this being the new norm. I've heard that term used again and again, repeatedly in this, and it's frightening and disgusting. I've even mentioned that term before, how I hate it and how it's meaningless, and how it underplays the importance of what is actually happening at the moment, and whether or not you actually are a participant in it, or if you're just an NPC, a non-player character. You don't even get to join in the fun and games. You've just been programmed, and that's all you can do is follow your programming. You don't get to go out on the adventure. You're a non-player character. And that seems to there's a chilling effect that happens in cases like this, especially the longer it continues to go on. It's going to be discouraging, and people are going to lose a little bit of hope. Things that are happening. This was the list I'm talking about. A whole bunch of people that lost their jobs are not getting their jobs back, ever. They're not coming back, because take a look at what's happened in the economy over the last decade or so. And there's, again, here we go, break off into another bunch of points in different facets of this thing. All of the things that have happened, the manipulations of the minimum wage, the introduction of newer technologies, all these things are taking place. So a whole bunch of these people that were crying months and weeks and years ago, excuse me, over how bad the work was and how they weren't getting paid enough to do it, and minimum wage this and $15 an hour that, you ain't getting your job back. You lost your job. The technology to replace you was already in place. They just redid a McDonald's here in Topeka. Topeka's slow, old, broke, poor, you name it. It's low on the list of places that need anything done, or it's high on the list of places that need stuff done, low on the list of places that are going to get stuff done, because it's a broke, depressed economy, ahead of the rest of the nation. But they redid a McDonald's here, and the first thing that they did when they redid this McDonald's is replace half of the cashier stands with digital stands. So you can go and place your order in a digital stand. And this is a technology that McDonald's has been playing with since 1986, at least. So you don't think they're going to take the opportunity to replace a whole bunch of these people? It's absolutely happening. It's just one more facet of what's going on. But and depending on who you talk to, where do you go? What's the next thing? Stop, slow down, breathe. This is what I've been talking about the whole time. Don't let it all get to you. Don't get caught up in the craze of it, because it's a slow burn. And this is another one of these synergies. I haven't heard that term in forever, which in the groups I run is actually kind of strange. I haven't heard the term slow burn in a long time. And then I was talking to my mother yesterday. She's in Oakley, Kansas. We were talking about what the situation is like there. It's a little less depressed there in the terms of the ability to shop and things like that, because it's a smaller community. One store holds a lot more stock, but doesn't feed as many people, even though it's a great big store or whatever. But I was talking to her, and we're just talking about some of these implications and some of these facets of what's going on. And I used the term slow burn. And then not half an hour later, what was it? What was I even watching? A sitcom, something on Hulu. They used the term slow burn. And for those of you who are into connections and catching those things that the universe is trying to tell you, that's kind of scary. The context that I was using slow burn in, and then to have it reiterated to me a very, very short time later. And that's not a common phrase. That's not something that everybody's using every day. It's pretty specific to a conversation or to a situation. And so that can be kind of scary. And I've thought about this. Last week on the show, I was remiss to say anything about sort of, I think we were in a big surprise. We're sort of by Monday or Tuesday. Well, that's where this comes in. Okay, so they don't tell us. They've got the timeline thing that I was talking about. So if they can build a timeline in real time suggesting that these things need to be done. And so phone calls, emails, backroom deals, and all of a sudden it just keeps ratcheting. Every time I think that it's slowing down, every time that I think that it's stopping, there's another story. There's another, a Bill Gates or the little guy that's on the team, on the president's team, Dr. Why is his name escaping me at the moment? I could pull it up in a heartbeat. But the point is that all of these people, every time I turn around, there's it could be weeks. It could be more weeks. It could be this. It could be months. It could be summertime. And things are just slowly grinding to a halt. It's that slow burn. And it's got to stop. It has to stop. And it's interesting because this is going to suck. You know what happens? This happens all the time, and I hate to sort of defend the president or anything like that because of the everything else that's wrong. But he's been the sort of a decent wartime president, if you were, while this is going on, and he's tried to, from what I can see, I've watched, and this is all I have. I don't have anything else. I'm not taking anybody else's input or opinion. I'm watching the man and listening to what the man says, and he's done and said the right things that as far as we go, as far as America goes, that I think you can. He's tried to say that we need to keep the economy going, that we can't lock down, we can't do these things. But here we go. Then the next thing is, it could be weeks more. It could be weeks more. And it's just his optimism, and that's the spokesman for the company putting on the show, right? While he's pointing out the chart to you and the numbers are going down and business is going down, he's still telling you, no, everything's fine. Don't worry about it. So the whole thing has just got my head twisted and my heart and everything else just twisted and going in a million different directions. But the one thing that I'm still concentrating on, the one thing that's clear in my mind is that my people, we had, my circle, family, friends, the neighbors, the community. These are the things that I have to be concentrated on. These are the things that are going to survive, whether any of the rest of this does or not, for whatever reasons. It's all out there. Listen, go to towardanarchy.com. I know we're coming up on a break. I haven't really talked anything about what's going on, but it's always there. March 29th, if you're live with me. If not, dig in the archive, and you will find it there. March 29th, my guest, Andrea Packwood, is coming on. She's fighting corruption that's running rampant in the child court systems, child protective services, the family courts. She's doing that in California. California Advocacy is her group. She's coming up in just about 5 minutes, and we'll talk about some more of what's going on there at towardanarchy.com when we get right back. I'd want to take my own advice, It's kind of fun. Oh boy, full day of interviews today. my guest, Andrea Packwood. She's coming up here in just a few minutes, and she's fighting the corruption in our family courts there in California, specifically. And we'll talk to her about successes and failures and why she does it, and maybe how you can help, what you can maybe get involved or follow her example, some of the things that she's been doing. And this is a long conversation we wanted to have for a while. Trying to get her on the show here for a little while, and we finally have managed to pull it off. And apparently she's got a full day of media ahead of her, so she's we'll get her connected, and we'll have this conversation with her about what's going on. Go to towardanarchy.com and you can follow along, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. California Advocacy, the link is there for her Facebook page. Then California Family Advocacy. Geez, I gotta skip over the whole word there. California Family Advocacy on Facebook. That link is there on the page. Just look under the archive on March 29th. Then a legal analysis. This was the paper that she had shared with me. Why complaints against judges should be public. It's a long-term, it's a big paper. It's some homework for you kind of thing. Also shared some other links, 15 seeds to sow for food in less than a month. That seems like it might be a pertinent thing to concern yourself with at this point. More than 3 million people filed unemployment claims last week. And wow, that's crazy. It's normally a very, very small number compared to that. I mean, ridiculously small number compared to that, and it bounces. I would give you a number, but I've told you before about how the unemployment claims are adjusted. Like they come out, they're adjusted again, So 3 times they're adjusted. Again, even at the end of the year, it's ridiculous. They adjust them at the previous or the next month after they adjust the previous month's numbers the next month when the next month's numbers come out, and then they adjust them again at a quarterly rate, and then again at the end of the year. And they almost always go. They're almost always bad. It's always worse off than they told you. It's a propaganda thing. They try to put the best spin on it again. Quote for you: resolve to serve no more, and you are at once freed. I do not ask that you place your hands upon the tyrant to topple him over, but simply that you support him no longer. Then you will behold him like a great colossus whose pedestal has been pulled away, fall of his own weight, and break in pieces. Etienne de la Boutier is the author of that particular quote, and the link is there as always to go and find out about that particular interesting individual and some of the early anarchist thought that he was involved in as a French judge and a writer. The picture I shared today was nice and simple, so I'll actually try to really share it with you over the radio, as I'm not inclined to do so much anymore, as it disappoints me. But this one was really easy. It's a guy in a clean suit and mask and everything. He's got the whole thing going on. He looks like the sort of spaceman with the zipper-faced helmet and all that to protect you from a disease or something biohazardous. Oh, cool, good. He's connected, and so we will get going here in just a few minutes after the next break, and we'll talk to her. He's standing there on the corner, and he's holding up a sign that says "Plandemic," not pandemic, but Plandemic. And while I'm not one to sit here and talk about the conspiracy or anything like that, about how it was created, the reality is and how it's being used. It is a meta event. It is what they do with it, what you do with it, how it's responded to that's important. All these, maybe these other things are important, particularly if you're in a certain field or your bent is to find, the crime, to go back and spotlight the criminals and make them pay for it. That's great. That's all fine and dandy, but that's something that, would have been helpful beforehand. It would have been nice if he could have stopped it, or it'll come in great if, government and leaders actually ever are made to suffer some consequence for their actions and their failures. I mean, look at the last big thing that happened here, 9/11, last big traumatic national event like that, and think about all the conspiracy around it and everything, but look at all that was in place. We have this perspective now that we can look back and say, look at all these things that were already in place that were initiated after the fact. The plan was already in place. So, yeah, it's a pandemic, maybe it's natural, maybe it's not. It doesn't matter. It's up to you, what you do, how you respond. That's what's going to be important. One of the things that you can do is fight locally. And we're going to talk to Andrea Packwood. She's up next, and she's going to tell us all about her fight against family services.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
TowardAnarchy.com, that's the place to be. You can follow along, as always, if you're with us in real time. Right there on the front page, you should see Andrea Packwood. Click that link right there, and it'll take you to the March 29th page. Otherwise, just dive into the archive there, and you'll see that she's fighting corruption that is rampant in the family court system. Her group, California Family Advocacy, I shared a link there to the Facebook page. You can see what's going on there. We're going to talk to her about what it is she's doing, why she does it, and maybe how you can help or what you can do in your own backyard, since you're locked in your house at the moment, to be able to do something to change this, because this is there's no surprise to anybody in this audience that the family court system is corrupt, and that it's oftentimes it's a pipeline to abuse and child trafficking and things like that. So we'll talk to her about some of these things that are coming up here in just a second. I just want to tell you about these things that are up there so that you can follow along. So TowardAnarchy.com, that's the place to be. And we'll I don't know. You would post it. What? No, I'm sorry. 2 or 3 or 4 things going on at one time. Let's do this thing. Let's dive into this, because this is a conversation that I've been wanting to have for a long time. I got to get my cigar lit here and sit back, because I'm going to let Andrea talk and tell us about what's going on. Because I don't want to assume that I know, because I haven't been in this fight. I've been very successful in any time that, and it's happened a couple of times where child services has come and knocked on the door for one thing or another, and I don't let the vampires in, and I've been very successful at that. But other people, they get caught up in this system, and it's corrupt, and there's these criminal judges, and we just have to talk to her about it. And we have to see what she has to say, because she's down there on the front line of the battle. So, Andrea, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate your time. Are you there? I keep hearing something, but then it goes away. Maybe? Almost?
Hello?
There you are. Hey.
Hello?
Hi, Andrea. How are you?
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah, you can't
Hello?
hear me, though. I take it you can't hear me.
Hello?
No?
Hello?
It's like an AT&T commercial, right? Hello? Are you there? No, I am here. But I don't think you can hear me. I can hear you, but you can't hear me. No, not. I can still hear. You're getting it. Okay. Yay! Hey, how you doing?
I am doing great. How are you?
I'm all right. Us getting connected is just not. It's not easy, is it? We've been trying for about a year, and every time. It was about May of last year, I think, when I first probably reached out, maybe June of last year. So it's real close, almost a year now.
I am so sorry. I've been so busy advocating for families, and
I love it.
Yeah. We work with a lot of families. We're free service, and we go to rallies. We start rallies. We have started up a class action lawsuit. We are very, very involved with these families and the suffering and getting the word out there. I'm doing 4 podcasts this upcoming month. It's unbelievable.
Oh, wow.
It's like, yeah, I got about 1 a week scheduled, which is exciting. I'm glad to get the word out on what they're doing with people. It's unbelievable. These family courts are running a for-profit racket. They have made an industry out of selling children that come through the family courts. They're receiving Title IV funding, which is robbing everyone's retirement Social Security benefits. They're draining it. They take these funds out, and what they do is they get paid every time they see the child from their family. They receive federal funding for that. I think it's a $6,000 check. They also get paid again if they place these children with either an adoption or a group home or a foster care setting. These children are drugged. They're molested, tortured, starved, beaten. Unbelievable, unheard of things happening in America. This isn't North Korea, but it might as well be if you're a child and you get kidnapped by Child Protective Services. These children are being threatened that they have to testify against their parents. And if they do not do so, they get put into juvenile hall. We've interviewed numerous children who actually said that they were being threatened with punishment if they didn't testify against the parents. The reason being is if they can testify against the parents, that gives the court justification to steal the children. They're telling the children going into courts what to say against their parents to set it up so that they can get the children and get the money. They get the federal funding checks, the Title IV funding checks every time they take a child away from their parents. So that's their complete goal of their industry, is to make the money by stealing these children. They have zero intentions of returning these children to their parents. That's not how they get paid. They only get paid if they remove the child. So what they have is they've set up a whole system of denying due process and avoiding civil rights for these parents. What they do is they put a gag order on the parents, so the parents aren't allowed to speak to the media. They're not allowed to broadcast what's been happening in their personal cases. They call it juvenile cases or confidential. What that really is it's just a scam to shut the parents up so the word doesn't get out about what they're doing. They're sex trafficking these children. Everyone knows foster care homes are just a gateway to foster care straight to prostitution rings. So it's just absolutely a racket. So the denial of the civil rights with the gag orders, they threaten them, the families, the parents are threatened if they go to the media. I'm threatened all the time. They physically threaten to put their hands on me. They've made threats to put me in jail because I advocate for all these families. And it's $1 billion racket. They're making billions of dollars a year, taking these children away from their parents and putting them into sexual servitude. And the money is coming out of this Title IV funding from Social Security, which is draining our retirement money. The children are either going to be, if they don't go along. I spoke to a child. I interviewed a child who refused to testify against his mother. He was put in. He was given a choice of. They were talking about putting him in either juvenile hall or a Pleasant Hill, California group home. When he was in the group home, he witnessed horrific things. There's a story about it. If you Google Judge Lois Haight, CPS, and Contra Costa County, you'll read all about the sex trafficking crimes. They were sending little girls out to find Johns, or clients, if you will. These girls were coming back with $100 bills or $50 bills. And, it's disgusting. These are 15, 16-year-old girls put in group homes. What they do is they get the kids hooked on drugs. And then once they're hooked on drugs, to get more drugs, they make them prostitute themselves. That's how they pay to receive additional drugs. And by the time the child is hooked on drugs, they'll do anything to get that drug. When you get someone as a drug addict, they will lie, cheat, steal, murder to get the drugs. And there are children dying in the foster care from abuse and from being drugged. There have been stories. There was a wrongful death case in Contra Costa County. You can Google this, where the child died from being drugged in that foster care group setting. And I know another case of a baby that died from abuse in a foster care. It was sent there by Judge Rebecca Hardy. This was about a year or so ago. But these stories are all covered up. The local media, like, for example, the East Bay Times, who has actually interviewed me. I think I'm probably the only advocate that has been interviewed by them. But they only want to talk about specific things like a protest or a rally. They don't want to talk about, or certainly they don't want to publish any evidence about court wrongdoing. I asked them over and over again to cover this story about these children that were dying or being drugged in these group homes, and East Bay Times flat out refused to cover it. They just covered it up. So I do want to shout out and say that the newspapers that have been covering our stories and have actually been revealing a lot of the truth, which is wonderful. Epic Times has done some coverage. National File, I know OAN has covered some material. We have a bunch of independent journalists and podcasts such as this that are getting the word out, which is wonderful. We're anxious to shut this racket down. When they are caught or they get in trouble or they have issues, they just say they want more funding, that they need more funding, and that will solve the problem. And that's not the solution at all. All you do, giving funding to family courts, to child protective services, to child family services, is you're just feeding the monster. It just becomes bigger and more consuming of more children. What they're doing is purely evil, wrong, unconstitutional, unlawful. I have a blog page on Facebook. If you go to Facebook and you search for the page California Family Advocacy, I just recently posted a number of judges who are getting arrested, which is wonderful, that are involved in sex trafficking rings. One was selling children to for-profit jails, got caught doing that. So I'm excited to see that the curtain's being lifted and some of this is coming to light, which is good. It's about time. It really needs to. And I think the individuals that are getting out there, getting the press and bringing this to people's attention is really helping put some cracks in the lies and this deceitful business of child sex trafficking, which is the industry that Child Protective Services really is in. I like to call them child predator services. I think that's more appropriate. Back on the subject of denial of due process, when a parent comes in and they're fighting to protect their children, they put the courts, who have no issues with time or money, they have unlimited time, they have unlimited money, they intentionally put these parents over and over and over again, parent after parent after parent that we represent, into years and years of courts to try to fight to get their children back. And they do that on purpose for a variety of reasons. Parents that all of a sudden have to go to court 1, 2, 3 times a month, which it happens, and they have to prepare, and they have to have lawyers, and they have to present documents. It almost becomes impossible for them to hold down a job. It becomes impossible for them to be able to pay their mortgage. These parents go through all their savings, their checking accounts. They go through the ability to work. They lose their houses. These are common stories that I hear from hundreds and thousands of families. Then when they're there and they're fighting, they're not allowed any discovery, meaning anyone that creates a claim against one of these parents.
Hold that thought. We got to go into a break, and then we have a short segment, and then we'll have a really long segment to get right back into it. But hold that thought. We'll come right back after this break on Toward Anarchy. We're talking... Excuse me, man, there's that cough again. It's going to get me. We're talking to Andrea Packwood. Go to towardanarchy.com. We'll be right back. Trouble we had getting connected there immediately, because I've been talking about this for a long time. It's one of these conversations that needs to be had. This is a short segment right here. So go to towardanarchy.com. Click on today's date. You're looking for March 29th. And you'll see the link that I was talking about. Andrea was talking about California Family Advocacy on Facebook right there. You can click right there, and it'll take you to the blog that she was talking about, where she's talking about exposing these judges, and all of the information, everything that she's doing is up there. And you can reach out to her if you happen to be out there in need of help. We want to get, this is such a short segment. Go ahead and finish the thought that you were on. And then after we come back from the top of the hour, we'll talk about maybe ways that people can get involved and try to help. Because I think that ultimately, when it comes to the conversation that we're talking about here, it's no surprise to any of the people that we're talking to right now. I think we all know that this is going on. I think that what we need are the tools and the people like yourself who are down on the ground there that are actually doing something to fight against it. So I really appreciate what it is that you do, and that you've been able to take the time and come and tell us about exactly what it is you're fighting for and against, because it's insidious. It's crazy what's going on in this system.
Yes, it absolutely is. We posted recently also, we're starting a class action lawsuit. So we're in process right now of collecting intake applications. And what that means is for people that have had their children taken or have had, just tremendous legal abuse, or friends and family that have gone through this process where children are being taken and being sex trafficked for profit by Child Protective Services, Child Family Services, and family courts. They have a place where they can go. We found a lot of these parents just are completely fried in terms of resources, and they've given up hope. A lot of them are suicidal. It's just unbelievable. So we started up a class action lawsuit. We're taking intake applications. We're going to be grouping together cases that are similar and then pursuing group cases on it. It's a less expensive way to litigate, and it allows these parents to have a voice and to be able to pursue the crimes that have been thrust upon them, and have an option to get their children back. I have already helped with filing a federal lawsuit whereby we're bringing forth a federal challenge in San Francisco federal courts, making a constitutional challenge against the family courts, saying that they are proceeding in ways that are contrary to rulings that have been decided by the U.S. Supreme Court, especially recent decidings about administrative state, where they're making vague and rulings that the general public doesn't understand, or someone of normal intelligence wouldn't even understand what is exempt or what it means. These rulings were decided by the U.S. Supreme Court to be void. And the family courts, the administrative state, they do it all day long. They just make up nonsense, false charges against these parents, vague language, and it's now unlawful. So we have right now in front of federal court coming up, I believe we're going to start that in April next month, a constitutional challenge against this vague language of this administrative state, where they're using these decisions or rulings that are contrary to recent rulings made by the U.S. Supreme Court, that these are not lawful. So I'm very excited.
That's amazing. I think that's great, because that's where we have to attack it from. Is it's got to change at the heart, from where it gets going. We got to go into a quick break at the top of the hour here, and we will come right back. We're talking to Andrea Packwood. Go to towardanarchy.com. Click on today's date, March 29th. You'll find the links and everything we're talking about. We'll be right back on Toward Anarchy.
This is RBN, the Republic Broadcasting Network.
We are living in an artificially induced state of consciousness that resembles sleep. The poor and the underclass are growing. Racial justice and human rights are non-existent. We have been lulled into a trance. They have made us indifferent to ourselves, to others. We are focused only on our own gain. That is their primary method of survival. Keep us asleep, keep us selfish, keep us sedated.
You're listening to Toward Anarchy on the Republic Broadcasting Network. Here's your host, Michael Storm.
Oh my, we are off into hour number 2. It's true, it is Toward Anarchy. I'm your host, Michael Storm. We do this live every Sunday, 1 to 3 p.m. right here on the Republic Broadcasting Network. And my guest today is Andrea Wood. Go to towardanarchy.com. It is March. It's still March. It's been the longest March in history. March 29th. Click on that date. Go through the archive. You'll see the links, everything that we're talking about. California Family Advocacy, her group on Facebook there. Very important that you go there, because I think we were talking about it just before we went into the break there. And we have a nice long time now. We have like 20 minutes to just go on and on, get everything out there and get it all out there. Talking about how it's a systemic problem, that it's at the core of everything that they do, right? And that you have to get in and change the very foundation on which this system has been built.
That's absolutely right. It's corrupt, and it's all about taking the money and taking children and trafficking them. People don't understand how profitable sex trafficking children is. This is a billion-dollar industry, and if they close down family courts, child protective services, and child family services, you would get rid of it in America because it is being perpetuated through these organizations. They're government agencies making billions of dollars a year selling children. And it's systematic. It's all over America. It's nationwide, every county, every state. They are in particularly targeting poor minorities, single parents. We find that it's very prevalent amongst these groups. But we've also seen them do this in married couple families. We've seen them go after wealthy individuals as well. They are targeting people that they think are less likely to be able to defend themselves, which is typical predatory behavior. I want to also really point this out because not a lot of people are talking about this, but there have been a number of senators and reporters who have come forward talking about child protective services, now known as Child and Family Services, and the family courts that illegally are seizing children from parents. There's two senators I wanted to highlight because this is, I think, the 10-year anniversary where Nancy Schaefer was murdered. This is a woman who was a two-time GOP senator from Georgia. She's probably the mother of the reform movement against child protective services. After she came out with a very public announcement against the Child Protective Services family court illegally, what she calls legal kidnapping. I'm going to call it illegally trafficking. She was murdered. She and her husband were murdered. There's been other senators that have come forward, have had similar demise. There was a Linda Collins Smith out of Arkansas. She went after the CPS sex trafficking prostitution rings, and she was murdered also shortly thereafter. If you go through our blog and you scroll down, there's at least 4 news reporters that are listed that met horrific demise as well shortly after or during the time that they were doing research and exposing this criminal organization and the prostitution sex trafficking rings. These were taken out, people taken out. We recently did submit a whistleblower report to Congress through Mark DeSalner, who is on the group for he does a committee there and to expose some of these issues and bring them forward to Congress. I heard about a week ago he was out for a jog and fell and broke a bunch of ribs, and he is now in the hospital. We're praying for his speedy recovery, but this seems to be a very frightening pattern of any House representative, Congress, senator, people that are coming forward and challenging child protective services. Usually almost immediately afterwards, they're murdered or silenced or something horrific happens. So we're praying for Mark DeSalner, because we had recently come to him a few weeks ago, bringing him evidence for Congress about how child protective services and family courts, commissioners and social workers are actually taking evidence that shows them sex trafficking children, and they're destroying it. In Corte Madera, California, a social worker was caught destroying 357 cases. Many of those were sex trafficking crime cases, children taken into child protective services and the horrible things that are happening to them. A lot of them were physical abuse as well. This is just unbelievable. So they're actually covering their tracks. This is not an organization where by they're being forthcoming or being honest. The whistleblower story that's now in front of Congress is about a process server in California. I helped him bring this case before Mark DeSalner, where he had found 3 cases whereby the commissioner hired by the family courts and the judges was actually taking evidence. In one instance, was taking evidence and destroying it, throwing it out. There was admission of that in one of the records. Another one was an issue whereby the victim had 2 transcripts from the exact same time, from the exact same case. These transcripts should be identical, and they were not. They were substantially changed in numerous instances and forged to be rewritten, like one that was pulled on one date and then another of the exact same transcript, same time, same day. They should be identical. That was pulled at a later date. showed that the court record had been changed, altered, forged to cover up a wrongdoing. There was this individual, this victim, was supposed to be due a hearing, and the court judge denied it to him. And because it was an obligation of the court to provide this, and they denied it, you can see in one copy of the transcript there's a reference of this, and later it's been completely deleted. They also changed who his attorneys were. Again, this is so important. This is the same transcript for the same time on the same day. There's no reason these transcripts should be different. They're substantially different. This evidence, I have a copy of it. The process server has a copy of it. The U.S. Congress has a copy of it. So it's out there. It's just unbelievable. So destroying, altering, forging, fabricating records to hide the wrongdoings of family court. I mean, these people are just absolute monsters. And then the individuals, as I said, if you go through our blog and you scroll down far enough, you'll come across at least 4 reporters who are actively working on exposing sex trafficking rings of Child Protective Services government agency that were murdered before their work was able to come forward. So while they were doing the work or asking the questions, they all were murdered. There's been a couple senators, U.S. senators as well, and a congressman were mentioning that something odd has been going on there as well. Unbelievable. But as a parent, what you're exposed to when you come through these family courts, and it's important to say that anybody who doesn't like a parent or has a political motive against a parent can just call. They don't need any evidence. All they do is they call Child Protective Services and they say, oh, I don't think the child's being fed enough or they're being abused or anything. And they will come and seize the children over that. That hearsay, the court, who is starving for the money to take the child, will admit that as evidence. The hearsay, unsubstantiated evidence, unsubstantiated hearsay is found to be automatically evidence in family court that can be used to remove your children from you. Now, if you have evidence to say that's not true, like, for example, they say, oh, gee whiz, you're not feeding your child, and you say, well, here's my receipt from Safeway. For the last 6 months, you can see I'm buying $400 worth of groceries a week. You're not allowed to admit that into evidence. So the hearsay that says you're not properly feeding your child can be admitted against you. And your evidence that you're feeding your child plenty, you're not allowed to admit that. And the reason you're not allowed to admit the evidence is because that could be used to substantiate that you're doing the right thing, and they're trying to build a case that you're doing a wrong thing. I know one case in specific where they made a claim that the parent had not taken the child or children, she has multiple children, to a doctor in years. That's the claim in the court. So the mom said, no, right here, I have a copy of the medical records from my doctor. They go at least once a year, or twice a year. Here's a copy of all the doctors seeing all 3 children. They refuse to admit that into evidence because they want the lie to be the evidence. The lie is this parent does not take their child to see a doctor and hasn't done so in years. And the parent saying, but I have a letter from my doctor saying that they've been the doctor for multiple years and they see them at least every year, more often I guess if they are sick, but at least an annual checkup. That was blocked from evidence. Why would that be blocked from evidence? Why would not the parent be allowed to put something forward? I mean, this is just maddening insanity. It really has gotten to the point where they think that they're bigger, stronger, they can out-finance the parents, and they just stomp on the parents until they steal the children and get away with it. And then again, remember, people say, well, why isn't this out in the news? They put a gag order and a threat on the parents. If they speak out, they will be put in jail. And these parents, if you go and look online on social media or you look at the people that belong to these groups, a lot of these parents are getting arrested for speaking to the media or just trying to protest what's happening to their children. They're just locking these children up. They take fathers and they say if they try to contact their child, they'll be arrested for bringing them a Christmas present or something of that nature. It's absolute madness because they want the child to feel like their home is the foster care. They try to parental alienate. They're actually masters at this. They try to make the child believe that the parent doesn't want them any longer. I've seen them propagate this nonsense. And so what they do then is they force the parent legally to stay away from the child so that the child sees the parent not around and believes the nonsense, which is absolute lies. And what's behind this is the money. So they're taking the children, putting them in foster care home where they're being beaten, starved, raped, abused, sold, just every possible tragedy. I spoke to one little girl. She said she was in a foster care home. She just wants to come home to her mom. She's being, if she speaks up when she has a visit with her mother about these things, they will end the visit. And then they will call security guards in to physically remove the mother. This is a 50-year-old woman, per se, with no criminal record, just visiting her daughter, and the daughter wants to come home. The mother will be threatened with physical violence by one of their security detail and removed. They'll tell her to move faster. They're going to push her or touch her, put her hands. It's just unbelievable. We did a video of that occurring, and we posted it up on our website so you can see it. It's so unbelievable. And what we do is we document these truths and we put them out there so people see that this is really, really happening. I keep skipping around the due process, and I want to get back to that. And I keep having things that are coming to mind that I want to talk about, but I want to.
No, that's all right. I told him I was going to light a cigar and sit back and listen, and that's what I'm doing. So, by all means, get it out, because there's not any bit of information. But it would be great if you want to hit that, and then just tell us about some of the things that you're actually doing. Some of the things that can be best. I know the most simple thing that everybody can do right now is to go to the Facebook page, go to towardanarchy.com and click on today's date, March 29th. And right at the top there, a couple of links down. It's not the very first link on the page, but you'll find the link to the California Family Advocacy Facebook page. And you can see that everything that she's talking about and explaining here, because again, everybody knows that it's happening, but then you have to share it. I think that's the biggest thing that a lot of people that are listening that can hear this right now is to take these things and share them, share these files, share the videos that she's talking about, share all these links that are up there. So do that. That's one of the biggest things that we can do to resolve this whole thing, is to expose it, to get it out there so that other people realize that it's happening. It's a systemic problem, as we said before, and let's face it, this is an international problem. It's not just an America problem. There's a lot of money behind it from all over the world. It goes real deep. It goes all the way to the top. So that's why it gets very dangerous to talk about it. If you're not really just being out there and open and honest and sharing this information, it's scary to think that this happens to. It's bad enough that we do this with just the regular court system and how we really don't have the due process that is claimed. But these children, on the auspice of protecting them, we throw everything that America is founded on, American judicial prudence is founded on, out the window when it comes to these children.
Absolutely. So I wanted to cover some more on this lack of due process that you pounded on. The parents have no discovery, which means any hearsay that's been admitted. I gave you guys some evidence, some examples of that's been admitted. The parents aren't allowed to see what they're being accused of often. Any evidence is hidden from the parents. You're not allowed to see it, touch it, question it. This is a violation of your constitutional right to know what you're being accused of, to know who is accusing you. You're not allowed to be told who is accusing you of what or what they're accusing you of. For example, if a social worker wants to testify against a parent, what they will do often is put the parent out in the hallway so the parent cannot even hear what the accusations are. And when the parent comes back and requests to have a copy or a readback of what has just been testified against them, the parent is denied this. This is illegal. This is so wrong and unlawful, but they're getting away with it, and they're getting away with murder. They really are getting away with murder. They're murdering children. They're making billions of dollars a year, and they just silence it. They put a cloak of secrecy over it. They're not allowing anyone to talk about it. They're not allowing the media. The media is complacent, other than some independent news channels which are covering this. Generally, a lot of the news is covered up and it's not being put out there. If a witness does testify and the parent wants to cross-examine the witness, in many cases this is not allowed. You're not allowed to question. If someone got up and said something and it's not true and the parent knows it's not true and they have evidence that's not true, you're not even allowed to cross-examine the witness. For example, if they say something and then they contradict themselves and they say something that's not true, that just gets admitted, that's a credible statement, and the parent is not allowed to question it, to challenge it, or to even ask questions. And if they admit something and they want to put that into evidence, the parent's not allowed to see it, touch it, question it, or challenge it. It's just automatic truth. And it could be anything. It could be, the statement I made earlier, the parent hasn't brought the child in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years to see a doctor. It's not true, but that then becomes the admitted charge against the parent, and the parent is not allowed to admit the evidence from the doctor stating otherwise. And if the parent wants to go to the media or do something or talk about it, then the parent's going to get thrown in jail. And that's the system we have today. It's just unbelievable.
Well, and unfortunately, what makes this hard is they come and take the child away immediately. The child is gone. So no matter what, if you don't play by the rules, if you step out of line, you don't do what they tell you to do, they already have your child. So anything that you do can instantly punish the child for your actions. So you have to be really careful. Right. So it's another thing that it's a chilling effect.
Yeah, it is. So it's frightening for the parents because the parents are worried something bad's going to happen to their child if they speak up. I mean, like, people say, why isn't this even so on the front cover of every magazine out there today? And the issue is just so horrifically heartbreaking, is that these parents are terrified for the well-being of their child that's already been kidnapped. They are fearful that they're going to go to jail. They've been served with a gag order. And I want to talk just briefly on how these children are removed from the homes. What they're doing typically now is they break into the homes. They just go into the homes.
Hold that thought. We're going into a break, but then you can come back and do that. They're just breaking into the homes of people and taking the children. It's that blatant. We'll be right back. Right. We'll be right back on Toward Anarchy. Click on today's date, March 29th. You'll find the link to California Advocacy on there. I know that we haven't gotten into what I was saying about what you can do, but then it just occurs to me that this is what this is about. It's about sharing this information, and that's the best thing that you can do, because the conversation about how you file the paperwork and how you catch the videos and how you do the interviews. And these are so much longer conversations. Just getting this information out there to even make this a front page story for once would be a great thing. So continue to share the information. Before we went into the break, you were talking about how they're just breaking into homes and taking children.
They are actually doing this. What they're doing, they're required, Child Protective Services, Family Services, they're required to get a judge to sign off on a warrant to come into a house. If it's premeditated, they want to come in. Or if they are suspecting that there's danger going on in the house, imminent danger, then they can come in and rescue someone. Like if they think a murder is going to happen. But it's supposed to be like literally like a knife being pointed at someone, imminent danger, like something's right about to happen. So they're just breaking into houses. There's no imminent danger. There's no warrant. There's no reason. They're just rounding up the kids like cattle. And they literally think of these children as cattle because each of these child has like a tag in their ear or a barcode across their back, and they're worth tens of thousands of dollars to these family court criminals. And I know of a grandmother who was taking care of her 3 grandchildren. She had the front door shut but unlocked, and they actually broke into the house because there was no notice, no permission, no knocking. They just barged in. So, I mean, they literally, like, kicked in the door. I mean, it was unlocked, but it was shut. They came and they just announced that they were going to take these three children from their grandmother. The grandmother protested and said, no, these are my grandchildren. We're just sitting down and eating. There was nothing going on. There was no reason to take these children. And then they threatened the grandmother. They said, and this is in front of witnesses, the gardener of the house was at the house as well. They told the grandmother that if she didn't allow them to take these children, that they were going to arrest her. They said that right on the spot. Now, again, to take the children, they have to have cause or reason, and there was none. They're required to have an instance of some kind of document that that these children are in imminent danger. There was none. They were sitting having a lovely time with their grandmother while their mother was traveling. They need a warrant. There was no warrant. There was no permission, notice, or invitation to come in the house. They literally just threw the door open and came in and seized these children. This is not an unusual circumstance. I've spoken to thousands of people whereby their children were seized from their homes or from their schools with no warrant, no provocation, no danger, no justification, other than rounding up cattle, American children as cattle, barcoding them as a ATM machine and herding them off. And then the parents get a notice to show up at court, and the parents then start this impossible battle that's rigged against them, trying to get their children back, and they just profit. They will assign the lawyers that will represent these parents. I'm not even talking about indigent parents. In the case of an indigent parent, meaning the parent can't afford a lawyer, yes, the court will offer a lawyer. But I'm talking about private pay lawyers. They will force you to work with one of their lawyers. There's this mother that was fighting this unbelievable, outrageous child kidnapping scheme, was forced to work with one of their preferred lawyers at $450 an hour because she was not indigent. She could afford it. And that lawyer did nothing but block the mother from admitting evidence, block the mother from being able to speak or testify, block the mother from having visitation with any of her children until after the jurisdictional hearing, meaning there was zero contact from around August 2017 to around March of the following year with any of her children. She was not able to see them or talk to them at all during that time, other than the initial intake of those children. And this is a lawyer making $450 an hour. This is Mary P. Carey of Walnut Creek. She's a family court lawyer. She's on the preferred court lawyers list. This is just an absolute tragedy that this is happening, and it is just. And
let's be clear about this: that this is not a unique story at all.
No,
let's be real clear about this. This happens all the time, and it's not just
all the time. All the time.
There's not.
We are California Family Advocacy. We are the largest free public service for these families. We're in Northern California. I see thousands of cases. I can't go into each an individual case. I'm pulling out one case as an example, but this is common. This is what is happening to these parents. This mother spent $400,000 or $500,000 on legal fees, fighting and is still fighting to get her children back.
And still fighting to get her children back. Unfortunately, that's the end of our time. Thank you so much for joining me. I will absolutely have you back again. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you so much. Please send me the link
take
so
care.
I can get that out there.
Absolutely. You bet. You bet. I will make sure to do that.
What we really want to do is spread the word. That's the most important thing.
Spread the word. That's it.
Get this out there in
Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
You get that? You see that's what happens? Oh, the warlords. Oh, they'll take over under anarchy. Oh, it'll be so terrible. Everybody will be fighting everybody. Don't you realize that's what's going on now? The warlords have taken over. The only difference is that under anarchy, in a system of no government, a system where people govern themselves, there's nobody given official permission to rob, murder, cage, rape you, take all of your wealth, take your property, tax your wealth, tax it. There's nobody that's given permission to do that. Do you understand the difference? It's a real subtle but very important difference. You can do it anytime in anarchy, in any system, monarchy, democracy, plutarchy, republic. Throw up anything you want up there under any conditions. You can do whatever you want. They can. That guy, she, him, her, that bad group of people over there, that good group of people over there. Anytime they want, they can do whatever they want. The only difference is under the archy, some particular, not the anarchy, the absence of the rulers, under the ruler, there's a special class of people who can do that. They can rape, rob, cage, murder you or anyone else they want to because it's made legal by their system. What's so hard to understand about that? It's another one of those dishonest conversations. I had one of these conversations with my aunt this week, and it was about what the government should do in reaction to the pandemic. And I said, as far as I'm concerned, government shouldn't do anything. But if government has any place at all, I believe that its position is to promote the general welfare. That's an exact quote. It means something very specific. To take the ideas of a good society and promote those ideas, to put them at the forefront of ideas as a voice for reason, as a representation of what America should be, as an authority, whatever you want to call it. They put that forth and promote it, not push it, not enact it, not enable it, but promote it. And I said that it's for the children or for the greater good argument fails every time. I've talked about this before, how that argument fails every time. And she says, well, the general welfare and it's for the greater good are the same thing. And I said, no, stop it. You left out promote. You left out the word promote. You are not being honest in this conversation. And that's the gist of every conversation that would invalidate authority and invalidate government. One, it's never had. The conversation isn't had. I watch it all the time. I watch these long form conversations between these. It's something that I've gotten into during the point of this show because it's what I'm doing now. I listened to these long form conversations, and it's never the topic. It's never what would we do without government. It's always what would we do with this type of government versus this type of government. And when I need this type versus this type, I'm talking about either one that you participate in or one that's a dictatorship explicitly, or within the one that you participate in it being left versus right in that false paradigm, as if we don't all literally live in the middle. It gets really, really tiresome to have that done to you, and it's done to you by somebody like your own aunt. It's done to you by your own family, by people who are supposed to be honest with you, right? If nobody else is, if the rest of the world has nothing to gain by being honest with you and open with you and sharing with you, fine, so be it. But your family and your friends and the people that you love are supposed to, and that if for no other reason that they should want your respect, especially the older ones, and there's a generation. I get the okay boomer thing. Let me tell you, I get it, because there's a generation of people in there that are some sycophantic, bootlicking, sorry, helpless, whiny, just, oh my God, you people, just stop. And what you want to do is, instead of taking care of yourselves and taking care of responsibility for yourselves, you want to push it off onto government. You didn't stand up for yourselves in the right way through all that period of time. You're a bunch of bell-bottom, flower in the hair wearing wussies. And I'm not talking about the opposite of that, about fighting for the state or anything like that. I'm just talking about this complete lack of participation in anything just for this la 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 la. Oh, let's do drugs, let's chase it. The South Park episode with the hippies is such a wonderful episode because at the time that it aired originally, I remember being in a group, working with a group of activists, and it's what it felt like. Yeah, let's play some music, man. We're gonna change the world, dude. Right on. This is a crunchy groove, man. Let's all get to the drum circle and everything. It's gonna change the world. And that seemed like so much more of the conversation than actually just doing something. There wasn't enough conversation on looking at self and investigating self in respect to what you do with the rest of the world. There was too much of this idea that we live, that we control our own universe, that we live in our own universe, but not enough of the idea that while we live in this our own universe and control our own universe, that we actually are responsible for how we react and interact with it. And that's why I'm always talking about this. I talked about it at the beginning of the show when I talked about it in relation to these meta events like this pandemic or 9/11 or whatever it is. And it's in the reaction. It's up to you, whether it's the internet and the people that are on there. It's this reaction that you put forth. It's the energy that you put forth, the action that you put forth out into the world that is what is important. Stop being so offended by the input that you take and be more proactive about the output that you give, because it has a real influence. If you have children, you have people around you that listen to you, whether it's even just on the social media, take a second and do the critical thinking thing. And that brings me to a good point, because I haven't talked about what's coming up over the next few weeks over the show, because they ain't shutting us down. They will not stop the network. They will not stop RBN. They won't stop producer Ken. We're doing every single thing we can. We need to be able to make sure that regardless of where we are at the time, we're able to put the network on the air, put these shows on the air. So they're not going to stop us. And so what's coming up over the next couple of weeks, I got some great shows for you. You're going to love this. Oh, God. So Dr. D, great, wonderful friend of mine. He's one of these people that I talk about this, why I know they exist, that isn't in. He's not plugged in. He's one of those guys. He's out here in society, and he's plugged into the sense that he creates community around him and joins community around him that is plugged in and understands the internet and these things that are going on. They just set him down at the computer, he'd probably touch one button and it'd blow up. He knows nothing about it. He's one of these people that I've talked about before that truly exist, that they're a little bit harder for you to reach. That's why the radio programs, the satellite delivery of Republic Broadcasting Network, of this show, of all the other shows on the network, all the different ways that you can hear this are important, because he'll still listen to podcasts. He still listen to an Alex Jones or something like that. So you got to give them what they need. You got to take this stuff and you have to share it. You have to give it to them. You may not be able to share it via a link. You have to take this show, put it on CD, give it to your friends if you think that there's a good, like the conversation that I just had with Andrea. But Dr. D, he and I are going to catch up on the show here in a couple of weeks. I don't have him scheduled for a day yet, but I'm so excited about the fact that he's going to be on here, because I haven't talked to him in a while. He's one of my favorite people in the world. Also, Josh Patterson is going to be on the show. We're going to talk about fishing. That's probably about all we'll talk about. Maybe some of this liberty stuff, anarchy, things like that. I'm sure it'll come in there. But we'll talk a lot about fishing. Derica Claus next week, and I mentioned her before. She's an author, activist, anarchist, all these things. We'll put a label on her, whatever. But she's talking about critical thinking, and I want to talk about critical thinking. Because it's so important. You can't just critically think about the thing. You have to critically think about the things. You have to decide what is important to critically think about using critical thinking. So it's a multi-layered, very complicated thing if you are trying to analyze and take in all the points and you're not trying to get lost in it all, to put that critical thinking hat on and approach some things from a methodical standpoint to reason your way through them. It's a very good thing to do for yourself every once in a while. Keep that brain sharp. because it's not an easy thing to do. Your skills to communicate and to process data fade if you don't do it all the time, and they fade very, very quickly, as I've found out. They don't go away because they're probably innate. But if you're somebody that doesn't have them, that's not innate, that you have to discipline yourself to do these things, it could be painful for you if you take time off. And then on the 12th, this is going to be fun. A dominatrix is going to be on the show. And before you start freaking out, this is not going to be explicit. We're not going to be talking about sex. This is not. We'll be talking about sex generally. There's not going to be graphic conversation or anything like that. We're going to be talking about sort of the libertarian view of personal ownership of yourself in the terms of sex. And to do that, I have a member of the Libertarian Party and a guest who is a dominatrix who you could actually go and look for on Pornhub if you wanted to. So we're going to talk to her on the 12th and a little more about that as we get close. I don't want to talk about these things too far in advance necessarily and put a lot of dates on them, because I found out doing that, and if I book too far in advance and talk too far about things, change, and then I sound sort of foolish talking about them. So, but as it is, that's what's coming up over the next couple of weeks. So some fantastic conversations to look forward to. Are there good cops? This is a conversation I had, and I had it all. I have it all the time, but I had it again this week with someone, and I have to answer the question. They're not asking me a question. They're telling me that they're good cops. They want to tell me, well, there's this guy and there's this, and he does this, and they do this, and this department does this, and they play basketball, and this, and I think, but no, that's not. So you're trying to tell me that there are good cops. Well, let's analyze that with the question: which ones are the good cops? Is it the ones who hide the crimes of the others until they get fired, until they're regretful, until they're resentful, until it benefits them? Is it the ones who show up to the scene of a crime 9 to 13 minutes after the fact? Those are the good ones. All right, at least they showed, right? They're pretty good. Maybe it's the ones who shoot your dog when they're looking for the neighbor. It's not even the right house. Maybe that's the good ones. I'm not sure. But it's definitely, I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm going to say that the good ones are not the ones that shoot people in the back while they have their hands up or while they're running away, while they're obviously not a threat. Those are not like Michael Cruz here in Topeka, Kansas. That guy is not a good cop, no matter how you spin it. Maybe it's the ones who don't do any of those things. I mean, maybe that's the reality of it, but maybe it's just the ones who spent their entire careers robbing, caging, and not necessarily murdering the rest of their fellow citizens to collect a paycheck. Over these victimless crimes. Let's be honest about the conversation. Can we ever, please, just have an honest conversation where the bar doesn't move, the topic doesn't change, you don't change the parameters of the conversation by changing the language or suggesting that what I'm saying doesn't mean what I clearly mean, what it says. Can we ever just have another honest conversation again? Will that ever happen? And by that, I mean with strangers who have a different, or even I guess people who have a differing opinion, particularly in the political sense, particularly in a place where your opinion, political or social or otherwise, is going to influence my life in what I see to be a negative way. Can we never again have an honest conversation? Because while I'm pushing for anarchy, I tell you, we live in it daily, about the choices that we make, about the things that we build, and we do it every single day. We influence this entire world, the people, everything around us, without the consideration of or that need for authority. Right? That's all I ever talk about. Can we ever get to have the honest conversation anymore where it isn't about, do we do it the left way or the right way? Can't we try the freedom way for once? The way that there's not somebody dictating to the rest of us? Because I'm going to use the argument that there's a a real great historical record of failure by choices at committee. And that doesn't mean that we can't have organizations and rules. There's no, anarchy doesn't preclude the hierarchy or rules or anything like that. It just means, once again, that there's nobody to force these things on you. I saw a great movie this week on Hulu, and I know everybody's at home right now, so everybody should be trying the free 30 days on all of these different services, because supposedly we'll be free by then, back to a normal world. A big time adolescence is Pete Davidson. How that is. I just said it again out loud, and my phone's listening and my computers are listening. So who knows what I'll be seeing from him pop up over the next week, as tends to happen when you say things out loud or search for things anymore. If you're letting it do it, there are places that I do and places that I don't. But for the most part, I don't have anything that I'm trying to hide from anybody or anyone. I'm not trying to pretend that I'm something I'm not. I'm pretty open about who I am. I mean, I'm not particularly open about my physical life or anything like that. Like next, the conversation on the 12th, we're not going to be having graphic conversation about anybody's sex life, because I don't want to have one about mine. That's not information people need to know. So things like that. But otherwise, I'm completely honest about who I am and what it is my goals are and what I do in life. And it's pretty freeing for the individual. You ought to try it sometime. And it's living my mind in anarchy, in that state of no rulers. But still being consciously aware of how I affect the world around me. It's an odd, interesting thing to be aware of yourself. We'll be right back to wrap it up on Toward Anarchy, if I can, but I'm also afraid if I hit the thing too much, I might unplug the thing too, because it's just, it's a microphone. It's hanging here and it's just plugged in right there, and I have to push a mute button right on the thing to stop it. But it's, talking about this coronavirus thing, it's documented weeks ago now that I was sick. I told you about how I felt and everything, and that it's been lingering, and that it's lingered all this time. So it's an interesting conversation about, is it possible? Am I just conflating the flu symptoms with what has happened now? But people have argued that it's been in America since December, if not maybe since before then, and spreading around. So it's interesting to see. I wonder because I'm still, it's weeks later, and there's obviously still some minor respiratory issue that's just sitting right there. It's just like the last little bit of it breaking loose. I feel a little better every single day, and I'm not down or anything like that. I'm not run down. I don't have any kind of fever or anything like that. I don't go out much. I'm not a spreader. I don't spread things around at all. I'm actually really clean. I'm the guy that way before this happened, I wash my hands when I'm been in the store, when I'm going in the store. I wipe off the cart with the antibacterial wipes and all that stuff. I'm not a germaphobe or anything like that, but that's the easiest ways to get it. And spreading cash money around, those are the easiest ways to get it, because those are going to be potentially, particularly in the shopping circle, where the store, wherever that it is, whatever type of store you happen to be in, if you're using those things, passing that credit card back and forth. I've seen some stupid stuff, man, like people wearing gloves at fast food restaurants to take the cards from people, but just the guy at the window, not the person in the car or anything like that. So what's happening is that he's literally wearing a pair of gloves that he's not changing every time, and he's handing every card that comes through the drive-through, of which there are many now because the store itself is closed. You can't go in, and he's taking that and passing it on to every single other person that he takes a card for. That's the stupid kind of stuff that I've seen happening in this, instead of people being sensible about it. And it's crazy. It's a crazy time right now. Don't let it get to you. Keep your head about you. Be smart. and be safe. And take this time to play some games, some board games, some video games, whatever it is with the family. Get outside. Go play in the backyard. Go play in the front yard. Go play in the park. Push the buttons and see if they'll. I haven't seen a lot of it. You know it's out there. The authoritarians pushing the people around. Push some buttons and make them make you go home. Don't get yourself killed, though. Hey, we'll be back next week with Derek Claus. Until then, keep listening to Republic Broadcasting Network, man. You guys make it possible, and we'll see you next week. Take care. It's Toward Anarchy.
You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, because you can handle the truth.